Hi everyone! I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I'm Norinda Fitria, a student in the Master of Education in English Language Teaching Program at Universitas Indonesia PGRI. This presentation is part of our academic speaking for scientific purpose class, and I choose a topic that I think all of us can really relate to. It's called Building Speaking Confidence, Overcoming the Fear of Mistakes in EFL. And just to make sure we're on the same page, EFL means English as Foreign Language. So we're talking about students who are learning English in a country where it's not the main language. For example, like here in Indonesia. A lot of EFL learners are afraid to speak because they don't want to make mistakes. But the truth is, that fear can be changed. And today, I'll show you how. Now, let's talk about why this topic is so important. A lot of EFL learners, including students we might teach, often stay quiet in class because they're afraid of making mistakes. It's not that they can't speak. It's that they're afraid of being wrong or judged or corrected too harshly. This fear can really hold them back. It slows their progress, lower their confidence, and sometimes even makes them stop trying. That's why I think this issue needs attention. If we understand what's behind the fear, we can do something about it. So now, let's dig deeper and look at where this fear actually comes from. So now that we know how important this issue is, let's look at why learners actually feel this fear. First, there's the psychological side. Things like embarrassment or low self-esteem. Students might feel like they're not good enough or they're scared of something silly. Next, we have the social and cultural factors. In some cultures, including ours, saving face is important. Learners may worry about being judged by their peers or even by the teacher. And then there's classroom environment itself. If students are corrected too harshly or too often, they might shut down. Or if there's no support or encouragement, they simply stay silent. As you can see, this fear isn't just about English, it's about how learners feel when they try to speak. And when this fear keeps building over time, what happens to the learners? Let's find out in the next slide. So, what actually happens when learners carry this fear with them? Well, first, they often go quiet. They stop raising their hands, stop participating, and become more passive in class. Not because they don't know, but because they're scared of getting it wrong. Then they start avoiding any speaking opportunities, group discussion, presentation, even casual questions. All of these become moments of pressure instead of practice. And when that happens, the learning slow down because speaking is one of the best way to improve language skills. And if they're not speaking, they're not growing. In the long run, some students might even lose interest in learning English altogether. That's the real danger. There's a quote. Here's that says, "The fear of being wrong is stronger than desire to be fluent." And sadly, many learners, that's true. That's why, in the next slide, we'll talk about the role teachers can play in changing this. So, what we do about all this fear? The truth is, Teachers play a huge role in how students feel about speaking. We can either make them more anxious or we can help them feel safe enough to try. First, we need to create a safe learning space. One where students know they won't be laughed at or punished for making mistakes. Next, we have to normalize mistakes because really, mistakes are just a part of learning. They don't mean failure. We should also practice gentle correction. It's not about ignoring mistakes, but correcting in a way that protects the student's confidence. And finally, we need to encourage risk taking. Praise students when they try, even they're not perfect, because trying takes courage. On the next slide, I'll share specific strategies teachers can use to make all of this happen in real classroom situations. Alright, now let's get into the real strategies. And the first one is all about encouragement. The goal here is to focus on effort, not perfection. When we give positive reinforcement, we show students that trying is already a win. Even saying simple things like, good try, or I like how you said that. It can really lift a student confidence. And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. Those tiny moments of progress are so powerful. The second part is about how we correct mistakes. Correction is important, but the way we do it makes all the difference. We need to focus on meaning first. Let the student finish their thoughts before jumping in. Then, instead of pointing out mistakes harshly, we can rephrase kindly. It's something like, that was great. Next time, let's say it this way. This small shift can turn a scary classroom into a safe space where students actually want to speak. And on the next slide, we'll look at how fun activities and peer interaction can make this even easier. Alright, everybody, here's another powerful way to build confidence and make speaking enjoyable. Let's start with group and pair speaking. Speaking in front of the whole class can be so scary. Small groups or pairs feel way safer. Activities like role plays, interviews, or casual peer chats help students practice without feeling judged. It's more relaxed and they often don't even realize they're speaking English because they're focused on the activity, not the fear. And of course, let's talk about fun. When we include games, song, and storytelling, the mood changes. Fear starts to fade and students get more engaged. The pressure is lower and their confidence naturally grows. Remember, when students are having fun, they're not just learning, they're actually enjoying the process. And in the next slide, I'll set a real example of how these strategies work with one of my students. Okay, now I'd like to share a real story from one of my own students. Let's say her name was Bunga. In the beginning, she hardly ever spoke in class. Every time I asked her a question, she would look down or avoid eye contact. But I started doing weekly role plays with her. And each time I gave her positive feedback, even for the smallest progress, week by week, she started speaking more and smiling more. And by the end of the semester, she volunteered to lead a group discussion, something I never imagined at the beginning. It really showed me that confidence isn't built in a day. It's built step by step with the right support, of course. And on the next slide, I'll share some tips that learners themselves can use to become more confident. Alright, now let's take a moment to speak directly to learners, whether they're students in our class or maybe even us sometimes. The first thing I want to say is mistakes are normal. Seriously, even teachers make them. And honestly, the more you make mistakes, the more chances you get to grow. Next, practice often, even when no one's watching. Speak to yourself, read out loud, or try thinking in English when doing daily activities. And also try to use English with friends. A casual chat in English can do more than we think, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And finally, reward yourself. Every time you take a step out of your comfort zone, give yourself a little celebration because trying takes God and you deserve to feel proud of that. Now that we've seen the learner side, let's wrap it up with a quick conclusion. So, to wrap everything up, yes, the fear of making mistakes is real and very common, especially for EFL learners. But the good news is that the fear can be reduced, and that's where we as teachers come in. We have the power to shape the classroom environment if we make it safe, supportive, and encouraging. Students will feel brave enough to speak even if they're not perfect. Because in the end, fluency isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to keep speaking, learning, and growing. Let's help our learners become not just fluent but also proud of every step they take. And I'll leave you with this. Don't be afraid to speak. Be proud that you are learning. Okay, everybody, that brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and I really appreciate you being here. I hope this topic gave you a new perspective on how we as educators can support our students, not just in language learning, but in building real confidence. If you'd like to connect or share ideas, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Instagram at @ppitlbjosenglish. Once again, thank you, and let's keep building brave classroom together. Goodbye, everybody.